So we've talked about the Age of Enlightenment, and with that, it began in the 17th century and ended in the 18th century. But with the Age of Enlightenment, it was philosophers and thinkers when they began to look for reason in human nature and in governments. Now, remember, with the scientific revolution, which we were talking about before the Age of Enlightenment, scientists and philosophers and thinkers, mathematicians, were all coming up with new ideas and breaking away from the reasoning that the church would give. And remember, we said that they were beginning to teach themselves. Well, with the Age of Enlightenment, it was very much the same thing, but the philosophers took the ideas of reasons, or the idea of reasoning, from the scientists and put it into studies of human nature and in government or in politics. So, as you can see here, we have the scientific revolution introduced to modern science, and it brought about all kinds of different things that we've looked for today. And then you have the Age of Enlightenment, which basically introduced modern ideas of government, and we see many of those ideas today. The Age of Enlightenment and the scientific revolution, both of those together, they did collide. Many of you have asked, did they work together? Yes, they did collide in the same centuries. The scientific revolution happened between the 15th and the 17th century, whereas the Age of Enlightenment started in the 17th and 18th century. Now, these two events together are also known as the Age of Reason. Jackson, enough. Sorry about that. And with the Age of Reason, you have that entire idea of new philosophies and new ideas coming about both in science and in human nature. Now, causes of it? The causes of it, of course, were the Renaissance. Remember, with the Renaissance, it was rebirth of Greek and Roman ideas and philosophies. These ideas and philosophies that were rediscovered were then looked at again during the Renaissance period. And this, in turn, led to the Age of Reason, or the Scientific Revolution, and the Age of Enlightenment. And then with that, new ideas in science and politics and government, or government, came about. Philosophers of the Enlightenment movement began in France and spread through Europe. Your first philosopher is John Locke, and he was English. But he believed that people should have more of a say in government and not just in one god or depending on one ruler. He believed that the people in the country should have equal say into how the government runs. They can't just depend on a monarchy, as we have seen with the absolute monarchy. And then you have Voltaire. And Voltaire was French. And his ideas were a tad bit different, although still very much alike. That, like John Locke, he believed that people should have rights to life, liberty, and property. Meaning people should live the way they choose, have the freedoms that they believe they should have, and anyone should be able to own property, not just certain peoples of certain rankings. And then you have Montesquieu. Now with Montesquieu, he was also French. And he, again, he was kind of with Voltaire. He believed in liberty and natural rights. But the thing about Montesquieu is he came up with the idea that government should be set up into 3 branches of governments. Now, with that, if you can remember your history lessons or your constitutional lessons, the American government is set up with 3 branches of government: the legislature, the judicial, and the executive. Now, with each of these things, we have what we call a checks and balance system in the United States, which allows us to have rule over different sections, and those sections cannot cross patterns with each other. So everybody has to work together in order for it to maintain. And then, of course, the fourth one is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He, again, was French. Now, he believed that democracy was the best form of government because with democracy, it was a protection of both individual rights and the whole of the country. So, as you can see from these four gentlemen, many different ideas of human nature and human rights and human liberties have all come about, which has created different styles of governments that we see today. You have a constitutional monarchy where you have not only still the monarchy, but then you have the parliament. And with the parliament, it's very much like the legislature that you see in the United States government. They set the laws, they create the laws, they make the decisions with the help of the constitutional monarch. You also have a republic, which is very much like a democratic country. However, with republic, it's one more step in the voting area. But with all of these, you see that people should have a say. People should have rights to liberty, life, and property. People should be protected with individual rights as well as the entire country, and that natural rights were an importance to how people act and how society should live. Now, the effects of the Age of Enlightenment, well, there's a few main effects of it. One, as we know of in our history, is the American Revolution. This is where American colonists separate from the British constitutional monarchy rule. And then they developed a democratic style of government to form the United States of America. Basically, we have democracy and we have the three branches of government that Montesquieu has suggested. With the French Revolution, which we will be talking about soon, both of these actually we will be talking about soon. However, with the French Revolution, we've kind of brushed upon it. If you remember, we talked about Louis XVI, Louis XV, Louis XIV, all of those gentlemen. They were the French monarchy at the time. And with the French Revolution, people of France rise up against the French monarchy. Now with this, the whole idea was to fight for rights to life, liberty, and property. And then they created new styles of government that they tried to put in place. And this happened for several years. It wasn't just one revolution and it all was finished and a republic government was created. They actually had quite some time, to the point it was almost about 20 to 30 years that it took them to get to that place. But these are just some of the effects. We also see effects of women actually being able to find a voice in society and be more seen and heard from than just having to sit there and look pretty as we once thought that they were going to. We're going to look more into the different things of the Age of Enlightenment soon.